we're going to talk about an awesome material that's still available, American chestnut. It's very hard to find. It's not actually extinct. There are trees around. They had a major blight a little over 100 years ago. Very similar to what's happening right now to the ash. A fungus came in again. It was from an Asian tree that was brought in around the turn of the century. The American chestnut trees got wiped out, and it was the finest, greatest American hardwood at the time. It mainly exists on the Appalachian mountain range, and there were over 3 billion trees lost from this blight. But the weird thing is, those chestnuts that died in the blight, they're still around and they're still germinating little sprouts. And these little sprouts come up and they'll grow to like as much as 20 feet high, and you'll have a decent little trunk. And then the fungus, which is still in the old stump or seedling, whatever, it attacks again and it just dies. It's such a great wood. It has a really nice straight grain. I'm going to show you this plank right here. This is a plank of chestnut. It's got a very straight grain. It looks like a little like ash, but it's brown, and it might be confused a little for white oak as well. But you know it's not, because it's lighter, and it's also a softer wood. It's not as hard. It's probably on the hardness scale. It's down there almost to white pine, but it always feels harder than that to me. But it's not as hard as cherry, so it's not really a great dining table top wood. But the beauty of it is that it has this warm, brown, hearty texture. You know, you think of it being in a library, or a place you just want to smoke a pipe. It's that kind of warm wood. And it has this beautiful open grain texture. It's ring porous, if you were paying attention to our understanding wood. Or what was that, all about wood? Yeah, the first episode of this. But it's straight grain. It has a lot of tannins in it too, which makes it more rot resistant. So it can be outside some. They did use it for fence posts and all kinds of things. It was quite often harvested and used in timber frame homes because it works so well. It being straight grain is very strong, even though it's not the hardest. And it splits really evenly because it's straight. And it works really well too. So they were able to shape up the logs into beams and all, and do quite well with that. So, when they were building timber frame homes back in the 1800s, even 1700s, they were taking the trees that were right close by, and so they were made of all kinds of things. Some of them are pine, and some are chestnut, and we see, of course you had a lot of southern yellow pine as you get further south, but anyway, what happened was the trees, there's so many had died in such a short span that lots of them were still standing there, dead, in the forest, and they weren't taken down for quite some time. So the bugs started to get in them and ate little holes through. So by the time a lot of the wood was harvested and didn't rot out, it actually was bug eaten, so you had all these little holes in it, which is known as wormy or vermy chestnut. It's like the advertising thing on jeans, the more holes you have in it, the more valuable it is. So one of the cool ways to get it is actually through reclaimed material. And if you keep your eye out, you might find a timber frame that's gone down in your area. If you know any timber framers, or, I hate to tell you this because you might compete with me, you can check on Craigslist under beams, which I've done a lot. And occasionally somebody has like some chestnut beams. And that's where I actually got these pieces here. And this is from a big old timber frame. You can see even the joints are still cut there, and the pegs here. This was cut out of a larger one, but it had so many joints in one area, I couldn't get anything out of it, so I just chainsawed it apart. And then I had some straight, clear material in that area. And this stuff, it was really nice, but it's cool because you're looking at these old beams and you're seeing the scratch lines from the carpenters or the timber framers who were laying out these lines. You can still see them knifed across. And then they would drill, I can see like the hand drill, and chop down in there. It's so cool. You can see the markings. Oh yeah, you can even see the drill bit bottoming out at the bottom of this mortise. So it's obviously a problem if you're trying to build furniture to have all those holes in it. So you try to find them if you can without. But these beams were in pretty nice shape, and they are wormy. So I don't know how, but I know it was this was an earlier frame, so the bugs must have gotten in this one later on. Who knows? But you can find some early stuff that's not wormy at all. So anyway, it's very cool to find because it's got that great texture, and you can do a lot of great stuff with it. But what I want to show you is first this. I'm just going to show you this chest. Check this out. This is an old chest that I got given to me by some guy who collected tools, and it's a long story. But he didn't have a lot of great tools, but when he said, "Oh, do you want this cabinet?" I said, "Sure." It's actually like a carpenter's chest, so it's got this funky key. Look at this thing. It's like double-sided, and goes in, you turn it horizontally, you can pop it open. But this is all chestnut, and it's got that same color, texture, and it's a really sweet cabinet. You can imagine this was filled with a really nice assortment of old-time carpentry tools. So you had these little bins, and you got these bits for the brace. I do have this. Check this out. There is some nice stuff in here, I should say. That's a really nice set of the old bit and brace drill bits. I forgot I even had this, but I mean these are in good shape. They look pretty sharp and not hardly used. This old brace, and man, I haven't used one of these in so long. But this was the way. So they drilled so many holes back in the old days. It's the first cordless drill. Huh? Oh, check this out. This is a tongue and groove plane. Stanley. Patented July 6, 1875. Woohoo. I'm looking for a number. Maybe somebody could look it up. But it's a tongue and groove plane, and so you just, right now it's set up to run the tongue. So where this fence is, it runs the tongue just right. It might be that you just flip this thing around and it'll be set correctly to run the groove, to make the groove. Yeah, because if you turn it around, it's offset, and then this fence will be aligned right with that edge, and you'll end up just cutting a groove with this edge, and you'll make your tongue and grooving. Pretty sweet. I've got an old scraper here. This is an old Stanley, and that's a number 82. You know, this had a number of scrapers in it. I don't know what they were into, but maybe they did a lot of like floor scraping, or that's got a good edge on it too. I think I did that. I was messing around with it because these you have a lot of leverage with these, but they're more aggressive. There's all kinds of them. They're long like this. They're great for like scraping floors, paint, anything like that. I don't know why were there so many? What was the big project they were into? I've got this Spokeshave, but this is not an ordinary Spokeshave. Obviously, it's wood, and it's pretty sweet, nicely made. Feels like white oak, but the cutter is, rather than being angled to cut a shaving, it's almost dead vertical. So you would pull, so the brass is bearing on the surface, and I got it set. It's actually a scraper, so you could scrape flat surfaces, but I think it's more for spokes, obviously. So after you might spoke shave, you could do a little refining with that guy. Then this goes on the end of a bitten brace. It's quite a gadget. It's one of those you look at and you go, what was this for? But you put the tenon in here, and you can actually adjust to the dimension of the tenon by changing this spacing. And then this is the cutting edge right here. So this would go in a circle. You'd set the depth here, and you're actually trimming the shoulder of a tenon, a round tenon. And then we've got an old transition plane. This is when they went from wooden to steel. The steel process was still very expensive, so the planes, they would make the sole out of wood, like a nice piece of hardwood, and then they'd build up the rest of the components here with steel to make them less expensive, or I mean to make them longer performing. Anyway, this also gave you the adjustment. You first had the adjustment instead of just tapping it. Now you had adjustment. I don't know, is this a Stanley? And then they became all metal, and you didn't see these. So they call these transition planes. You see them around. I've got one in much better shape I got from Pug that I like a lot. Then some goodies in here. This is some kind of like marking gauge. I don't even want to get into that. It looks like something John Wilkes Booth had. That's weird. Sorry. And an odd jobs that doesn't have all the parts to it. It's an odd jobs Stanley. That's what it actually was called, the odd job. Stanley #1, odd jobs. It's got a level in there. It could be used for a plumb bob. There were all kinds of like little clever ways to use that. Another spoke shave. This isn't a great one though. But what's cool is, check this out. There's a couple levels in here. This one is in pretty good shape. Look at the label, is still on there. To see the Stanley Tools label on anything is pretty special. You know it wasn't used much at all. So, but this looks like cherry. You can see the grain pattern is close grain. And you get some of that streaking, the pitch you'd see in cherry. That's a nice level. And then check this one. This is even nicer. This one's got the full brass inlay all on the corners. And this is the Stanley number 93. And this looks practically new. I don't think this was used at all either. But it's in good shape. And this is mahogany. And you don't see that genuine around, but you can tell by the grain. And this is clever, the way they do these sliders. They just make them a little shorter, like the lower down ones are shorter, and they ride on that lip like that. And then it goes out a little wider for the one on the top, so it can pass easily. You can get right down wherever you need to go. There's a couple saws in here that aren't that great. Look at that. You think? That's a distant. This is a rip tooth. You can tell by the larger, more aggressive tooth pattern and the angle of the teeth. But what I wanted to show you was the chestnut on this thing. It's just awesome. Now, this is so dirty. I haven't even touched it. But I'm going to put some paint thinner on this top. So these panels, it's crazy. They screwed them down, but this has about, in about 5 inches here, a little less than 5 inches wide, there's 75 years of growth rings. I counted them. And so that's like 16 per inch. So they're separated by like a 1/16 of an inch. So that's crazy. Look at that color though, huh? A nice warm. This is not chestnut here. So this could be really cleaned up, a little shellac on there, or just leave it natural. I was looking for some wormholes, but I don't see any. So just looking at this chestnut on this, and there's no wormholes, and it's older growth. I mean, it's really tight. So I haven't dated this, but I did find, I could see on some of these boxes that they were hand-cut dovetails, these interior boxes, but I did notice modern planer marks. So the modern planer marks has to put it, modern planers weren't really mastered until 1860. So, and then they were really in full use 1880. So to see planer marks on something, you know it's after 1860 and probably later than that. So this is probably a turn of the century cabinet or toolbox. So before the Blight, more than likely, before 1906, 1910. So it's probably 100 years old, but it's the way it's made with the hand-cut dovetails, and it's like an early production piece. So this is sort of like in the furniture world, it was similar, like the early production pieces were really nice. I mean, it was really good furniture. So if you can find old furniture like this, it's production, but it's really well made. I mean, I don't know about all these screws, but I mean, that's all cross grain, and you don't even see a split right here. So that's kind of weird. I'm not getting a split. We are seeing a split here. But chestnut is a fairly stable wood, and if you think about it, a lot of this is angular grain, so it's rift or almost dead quarter sawn here. So the only plain sawn area you have is just that wide, which moves twice as much as this over here. So it's amazing that it hasn't really cracked because it's screwed down across grain, this piece going the other way. So I guess maybe the screws move a little bit, but that shows you that it's fairly stable wood as well. Let me just show you a couple other things on chestnut that I like to do. So you can buy the beams, right? But you can also buy it as veneer. And there's lots of it available as veneer. This is a piece, check that, it's no worms, no worminess here. And I just checked the veneer supplier. I should have looked at Berkshire Veneer, but I know I got this a while back from Certainly Wood, so I checked their site, and they have this clear, non-wormy chestnut available for anywhere between $250 and $450 a board foot, depending on what it is. And you can look at the lots and buy it. You can also buy it a heavier thickness, like 1/28 of an inch thick. Most veneer is 1/42 of an inch. This is the heavier. I got it heavier because it's so textured. I remember I bought this to use it for bed rails of a chestnut bed I was making. Which, by the way, these beams, if you want to see a cool project on video, we have the barn beam bed, we called it. We probably should have called it something better because I don't know if a lot of people understand what it is, but it was making a bed with this chestnut. And I'm going to show you a little bit about the technique in a second. But that's the veneer you can get. And now if you buy Wormy, you got to pay about $1 more a board for the holes. All right? So you can get nice chestnut like that. Now, sometimes I'll just put it on, cover other wood or whatever. You can cover poplar to make it veneer over poplar and appear to be solid wood. Another thing I'd like to do is to cut it into patterns. So I squared up some of that linear grain and then arranged it, at right angles to each other like a checkerboard. And this piece broke off, but anyway, see, it's just taped together. I just tape it together like veneer, and once you get it taped together, you could glue it down and press it, get your tape off, and it would look basically like that. These squares, you've got these 5 are probably darker because the end grain is going up. And usually when a piece of wood is horizontal to the light, the light's bouncing off it more, so it's lighter. So now watch, I'll turn it. And now these horizontals and the other 4 are darker. I don't know if you can see that. So just using the reflectivity of that material. Another thing I've done, which has been fun, is I'll do the same thing, but instead of using veneer, I cut some strips of material like from the regular boards. So then I got this material down to about 3/16, I think it is. Yeah, this is just over 3/16. But you can make your own veneer just like this. So what I do is you could just arrange it like this. You could do the same thing and just arrange it at 90 degrees to each other. But, that's, and go all the way out. You'd have almost like a chessboard looking thing. But one of the things I want to do, and this I did on the barn beam bed, is I tried to make it look woven. So you can make this look woven together because you've got the thickness to do it. You just dome it in the direction of the grain on one side. And then you can piece them together. So I'll just show you one of these, how I would dome it. Now I just hold it in my fingers, and this gets kind of crazy. So just using a sander like this, my fingers, I know they're back far enough where I shouldn't get a manicure, but we'll see. So then I roll it. Get a little burn on that one. And then I'd flip it around and roll the other side. So this paper needs to be, the paper needs to be changed, and I haven't really done it much, but you can see it's glazed here and here. Yeah, I need to change that paper. So it will dome it that way, and then I'd come over to, let me see if I got one already domed here. Yeah, here's one better. All right, so this is a better example. After you've done it, it's kind of domed and it's thinner. And I just do it by eye till it gets down under 1/8 of an inch. Then I'll come over to the buffing wheel, and I've still got my wire brush on there. And I'm going to burnish this because chestnut works like the wenge from the coffee table, and it will texture. Not all woods do, but this does. So I just hold it like that. Flip it around. That's a really nice piece. And that's it. So the chestnut, because it's softer, it textures much faster. I wish you could feel that, but it's really nice. So here's a few that have all been domed and textured. So then what you can do is you can use them to arrange them like, so they look like they continue, like this one would be continuing. So now see how this one's diving under this one while that one's going the other way, and then this one comes back up again. So then we would go here. Let's see, we'll go here, here. I guess if you want it to look like it continues, you kind of use the same grain going in the direction you want. Let's see. So I've got 8 pieces. Yeah. Whoops, did that one backwards. Oh, this is the one I just did, so it's not. So they're all the same size. If they are, then what I usually do is I get them, I just put a little glue on the edges, and you can just get them so they're dead flush aligned. You can glue a few together, and then you glue them the other way, and just press fit them together, and that glue will hold them long enough. And you're keeping them flat on that surface. And sometimes what I'll do is then I'll roll glue on some piece of plywood or some type of substrate, and I'll put those, after they've been joined together like that, carefully so I don't break them, and they get veneered in the press. So then you have this whole pattern that looks woven together because of the way you've shaped it, and it's got texture. So it's a pretty interesting way of using the characteristics of the grain to create a visual effect that's dynamic and unusual. Here's a piece that has all the same grain, and this has been finished, and you can see these are smaller squares, but it's been just glued down onto a piece of Baltic birch. So you get that warm kind of textured surface. That's the method of making an interesting woven pattern. And the last thing I want to show you, I've got a piece of that veneer prepped a little bit. Let me put this will be my table. And what I did was, because there's such high tannins in the chestnut, it reacts really well to the chemical reaction stain of potassium dichromate. So you don't have to use potassium dichromate, but it's got a tan color to it. So let me just put some denatured alcohol right on the raw. Here we go. I'll just use this piece. So you can see denatured alcohol on there. It's quite light. But if you want that warmer, browner, rich color, you want to bring in the potassium dichromate. Will be awesome to react with it. You got to be careful with that and really read up. Anyway, this piece has been prepared a little bit, and all I did was wipe a little potassium dichromate there. Watch how this works. This is very cool. So this is not a stain, technically. Well, it is. It's actually, it's chemically reacting, so it's thoroughly dyeing it. It's dyeing like right. Watch, I'll just do this little patch. So potassium dichromate reacts with the tannins in the wood. So just starts like a chemical reaction here. I'm just going to let it sit there. And right now it's just darkening. It's having this reaction. And by the time it dries, it'll be significantly browner. Sometimes you'll buy this material, you see it's instant aging liquid or something like that. A lot of times it's potassium dichromate. It could be other chemicals. I mean, you know that ammonia works really well on white oak, the old fuming method, but that was pretty dangerous. So, but this is another way. Now you can see, look, it looks like I splashed some brown stain on there, but I just put the potassium dichromate and it's reacting strongly with the tannins already in the wood. So it works on some cherry, works great on mahogany. But anyway, I wanted to prep this piece to show you a cool finishing technique, if you do want to get into chestnut and get that rich, warm color on there. So here's the natural unfinished, and then from this point all the way over is potassium dichromate. And then from here over, I've got 2 thin coats of shellac. So I just brush them on, and I use the seal coat, but you could use others if you're not going to be top coating with a finish like a varnish. So now that it's sealed, so we've sealed in the potassium dichromate. What you're seeing right here is getting close to the actual color. So you have that really nice kind of brownish, tan, warm chestnut color right here. But we want to richen that up a little bit and get some more color in the pores and to get it a little closer to our chest. So now that it's sealed, we can do that with, this is actually the same glaze that I used on the article for Fine Woodworking magazine, the current issue. It has an article on finishing white oak, and it's a very similar technique to this. So you lay down your base color right on the wood, what you're after, and then you seal it in, and then it has this pore structure. So this is a very similar wood to white oak, but let me stir that up a little bit. This is Burnt Umber, the Mohawk brand, and works really great. It's a brown, but it's got a reddish tone to it. So it works really well. The burnt, I guess, is describing the redness of it. So here we go. I'm going to just start right here. I'm going to just smear it on there. You could brush it on. So this is not being fully, this is going mostly into the pores. There is a pigment in this, which is a finely ground powder, the burnt umber pigment, and this is oil-based, so it gives you plenty of time to work it. But we would go all the way down this thing, but I'll just stop right here. And because we sealed it first, it's not going to stay on this surface much, and we don't really want it. We don't want it to get too muddy. So let me get a clean rag now. So you can let that sit just a little bit, but you don't really have to let it sit very long because it just starts to glaze up a little bit, but it's still easy to remove. I could let it go a little longer, but I'll just go ahead because it's going to be close to the same effect. So now you start removing it, but look at how dramatically different it is. You start to get this really rich color and more of a contrast in the grain. And then you can keep wiping. You can actually wipe more off. You can leave more on in areas if you'd like. But this gives you a really classic chestnut look. Look at that. Pretty sweet. Let's see how it looks to our cabinet. I think we're a little redder here. Plus, this is very different. This is really fast growth. Look at the space between those rings. So that's 1 inch and you've got 3 rings. This we had 1 inch, we had 16. So a lot more see this is more open here. So when you have a lot of lines, you're naturally going to look a lot darker because more is getting captured in there. So this is not a great grade of veneer. I did look on Certainly Wood. If you could check Berkshire Veneer if you're interested in trying some of this stuff. I like looking for it with closer together growth rings so it looks a little more older growth like that. And I know they had some of that at Certainly Wood. And would you like any? Certainly would.
I had a couple questions.
Okay.
One in particular was probably something I should have had you answer a while back, but it says, what's the difference between American chestnut and horse chestnut?
Oh, the horse chestnut, it is a different type of tree. The American chestnut is the chestnut, you know, in the song Chestnuts Roasting on the Open Fire? I meant to look that up because that must predate like the early 1900s when that was written. Somebody look that up right now and see if you can find that Christmas song, because they're talking about American chestnuts in that song. So they were plentiful and around, and people did prefer to roast them. And, they would sell them on the streets, and you'd peel off the brown cover, and the lighter interior you could eat. But you can't eat horse chestnuts. They are poisonous. They have, I don't think they're poisonous to, they'd kill you, but you would have a bad reaction to them. They're not eaten chestnuts. But the American chestnut was considered the best, the finest chestnut in the world. Like there's chestnut in Europe, and so the European chestnut also has some issues with the blight, but not to the same extent we do. So
Do you know much about horse chestnut, or is that?
I don't know a lot about the horse chestnut. Oh, the wood, actually. I'm not sure how it differs, but it's not this. You don't hear about it at all. I'd have to look it up. I know it's a distinctly different species, just for what I've read and learned about the edibility of the nut itself. They're
more interested in using the wood.
Want to use the wood?
Yeah, they have, I think you said Stuart has enough horse chestnut around him.
I would try it. Yeah, what the heck? It might be like this. I'm sorry, I didn't even read up on that. But you could probably Google search that and find out pretty quick.
So Stuart's also asking, assuming one has an old chest of any kind, how often should one restore the finish on it?
Oh. I don't really restore, if you want to maintain the authenticity of the old look, I would do what I just did. I would clean it off with mineral spirits. Most furniture pre-World War II, was finished with shellac. A lot of that older stuff, some varnishes, other type varnishes. Shellac is considered a spirit varnish, not like a curing varnish. But so much was made with shellac, you can actually test it. Just look for a discrete spot, take some denatured alcohol on a rag, and wipe it on that spot. And if you remove the full finish, you've got shellac. It won't take off lacquer. That was where the big shift happened in 1930. Right about the 30s, I think, 40s. They shifted over to lacquer. The factories found that they could do much more. They got a nice result, and lacquer was a little more durable finish than the shellac. But shellac has some awesome, great properties. And I'm actually doing my seminar. If you want to go to Find Woodworking Live, they're releasing that sign up in the next week or so. So if you're not on their mailing list or signed up for them, check it out, because that's a really great event, and it fills up. It usually sells out fairly rapidly, but you stay right in the hotel in Southbridge, Mass. It's beautiful, and the food is awesome. It's all kinds of great seminars. It's an awesome time. You go with a few friends. Find Woodworking Live 2020. And I just mentioned that because my seminar is going to be all about shellac, like all the ways of using it. So you've already seen some. And Roy Underhill is going to be the main speaker, the keynote speaker. And he's also doing some seminars. So I wonder if anyone will come to mind if Roy's there.
So Bruce Grimes says that the Christmas song It was written in 1945.
Oh, wow. So there must have been chestnuts still around. Unless they were eating horse chestnuts. Or maybe it was someone just dreaming of when they used to smell the chestnuts roasting on the open fire. I don't know. That's a little trivia there. So,
Robert Wells and Mel Torme wrote it.
yeah, so they started, I mean, the blight began, technically, they say right around 1906. And it took years to spread. So, yeah, they were probably maybe still around by that time, but it was sad.
Well, they're probably talking, like you said, about their childhood.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, too. Yeah, because they were older guys then, right?
So, I have a little question myself. If you put denatured alcohol on something that you're cleaning off and it takes off the shellac, that's going to be a problem, right?
Yeah. Thanks. That's a good question. I meant to mention that. You do it in a discrete spot. So I did say that. Mm-hmm. So usually around the back, low, on the bottom, somewhere you can do it under molding. If it comes off, you can just wipe some more on. I mean, you're not hurting it. But once I clean the piece off with usually mineral spirits and steel wool, that gets a lot of the gunk off. And then after it dries well, you could pad on or brush on some clear shellac or whatever. And just thin it down, though, to like 1.5 pound cut. If you buy the canned stuff, not the seal coat, but the regular, it's at a 3-pound cut. So you can cut that in half with denatured alcohol. You could brush it on and revive that old-looking piece. But if you want to maintain the authenticity of the oldness, you don't want to do too much to it. So I would just, put on a thin coat if it needs it, if it's dried out. And it'll really come back to life. And then when it dries, you can buff it out with steel wool again. And it'll soften the sheen a bit. And it'll look really classic like it did when it was new, probably.
So how often should they do that?
Oh, only as needed. I mean, if it looks dry, I might hit that chest. I probably will, because it's so dirty. But, reality, though, I don't want, a tool chest to look too finished. If you want it really nice, I was looking at that thinking, am I ever going to use it for carpentry tools? No. But it's almost the right height to make a coffee table out of. It's a little high, I think. Well, it's 17. So it's the kind of thing, if you want to do that new thing where they have, what's that called? The industrial decor. Somebody knows.
Retro.
Yeah, it's like the cool thing to have somebody write that. What is it called? The decorating thing with using industrial look. Well, you could have a chest like this, and you could put a piece of glass on that. That'd be pretty sweet as a coffee table. You'd have to just do something about these. Bring these off or put a spacer there. And you'd be up at 17.5. Have to be solid, some good strong glass so you can see through to it. But that's a sweet, sweet cabinet.
My guess is they're talking about hope chest kind of stuff, blanket chests.
What, for finishing?
Yeah, how often they would.
Oh, yeah, if it's a nicer piece like that, you don't have to often. Shellac holds up really well. It just doesn't like high heat, and it doesn't like moisture. So, if you're usually in a living environment, you're not having that kind of issue. And if you get a couple coats on there and buff it out with fine steel wool, it will be beautiful and last a good long time. You don't really have to recoat it unless it looks really dry. And there again, always do your testing in a little discreet spot and see how you like it. And if you don't, you can always wipe it off denatured alcohol. You're good to go.
No other questions?
All right. Well, that was kind of a fun night. I love talking about materials, and maybe we'll feature a different wood every now and then. But this is just a classic, and it's kind of sad that it has that history. But who knows? Maybe they'll get it germinating and come back again. All right. So thanks again so much. Have a good night. I'll see you next time on Shop Night Live.